welcome to xCrimes. Tonight, we open the doors to 3 real Halloween horrors.
We are. We're taking a deep dive into some really disturbing historical sources tonight, charting how true crime kind of hides itself under the cloak of October 31st. And this isn't about ghosts or goblins, not the fiction. This is about how real human malice exploits that one night, the one night a year when chaos is sort of invited in and, well, the world puts on a mask.
It's that ritual, isn't it? Every single year. The pumpkins come out, the lights dim, the whole atmosphere just changes.
It does.
And for most people, it's fun. It's a temporary thrill, bending the rules a bit. But what happens when that suspension of normality, that idea of the thinning veil, what happens when it allows something else to cross over?
Something much darker.
Exactly. Not spirits, but calculated human darkness.
And that's our mission tonight, really. We're going to dissect 3 specific cases, looking at sources spanning, 4 decades, to see how Halloween, this holiday, shifted. It went from being the backdrop for a hidden domestic tragedy, secrets behind closed doors,
right,
to becoming this source of, national panic, mass hysteria.
Yeah, the candy thing.
Exactly. And then finally, how it became a cover for just random, lethal, terrifying rage. These sources really show us how that game, the pretend horror, just dissolved into something brutally real.
So let's start at the beginning. The first source takes us way back, over 60 years. It's a story of, forbidden passion, deep manipulation, and ultimately murder. All hidden behind something as simple as a doorbell ringing late at night.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1957. We're in Pacoima, California. The post-war American dream is supposed to be in full swing.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Peter and Betty Fabiano. They seem to embody that dream. They're successful. They co-own 2 thriving beauty salons.
Living well for themselves.
Absolutely. But it's late. It's Halloween night, well past 11 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
The trick-or-treaters, the kids, they're long gone. They're asleep.
Right, the streets will be quiet by then. Peter, he's 35, a former Marine, and Betty are basically settling in, getting ready for bed.
And then suddenly the silence is just broken. The front doorbell rings.
Which is weird, right? That late on Halloween, after everything's died down.
Very unusual. A late summons. Peter, probably a bit annoyed, understandably, goes to answer it. Betty's still in the bedroom. She overhears just a little bit of it. She hears Peter say, kind of wearily, yes.
Yeah.
And then that phrase, that hint of frustration, isn't it a little late for this?
Uh-huh. You can almost hear the tone.
Exactly. And then just silence for a moment, followed by this small, chilling sound.
And Betty described it later, didn't she? Not like a loud bang, not a typical gunshot.
No, not at all. She said it was muffled, like a small burst of air. That's what she put it.
God, that's eerie. So she rushes out.
She rushes to the hallway and finds Peter collapsed. He'd been shot just once, right in the chest.
And he died quickly.
Very quickly. The blood loss was massive. He died on the way to the hospital.
So the police arrive. What do they find? What strikes you immediately from the reports?
Well, the efficiency is chilling, and the almost total lack of physical evidence. For instance, no shell casings were found.
Which suggests
a revolver. Right, because revolvers don't automatically eject the spent cartridges like semi-automatics do. Someone had to consciously keep it.
Okay.
And there was no sign of forced entry. The door was opened willingly, and absolutely nothing was taken. No robbery.
So it wasn't random.
Not a chance. This was personal. It was a direct, targeted hit. An execution, really, disguised as some kind of late-night trick-or-treat prank gone wrong.
But initially, the investigation didn't have much to go on, did it?
It stalled badly. The clues were incredibly thin. There was Betty's description of the voice. She said it sounded like a man trying to sound like a woman, sort of forcing it.
Strange.
Very strange. And then there was a teenager, about 15, who saw a green car speeding away from the area around that time. But that was it. Vague.
And Peter Fabiano himself, the successful businessman, former Marine, no known enemies, nothing obvious.
Nothing the police could find initially. It made the motive really hard to pin down. Until, that is, the detectives started digging into the Fabianos' lives, their work, their personal connections, and a lead surfaced that pointed right back inside their own circle.
Okay, this is where it gets complicated.
This is where it gets really complicated. The lead pointed towards 2 women, Goldine Pizer and Joan Rabel.
And Joan Rabel. She worked for the Fabianos.
Yes, she was a saleswoman at one of their salons. And this is crucial. The sources, the police reports from the time, they delicately state that Joan and Betty Fabiano became Fairly close friends.
Very close friends. We know what that often meant, especially back then.
We do. It meant they'd started a romantic relationship, an affair.
And you have to remember the context here. This is 1950s California.
Exactly. This wasn't just a social scandal, which it definitely was. It was actually a criminal offense back then.
So that taboo, the legal threat even, it gave Peter Fabiano, the husband, immense power in that situation.
Huge leverage over Betty. And when Peter inevitably found out about the affair, well, his reaction was swift and total.
What did he do?
He fired Joan Rabel immediately, got her out of the business, and he strictly forbade Betty from having any contact with her whatsoever, cut them off completely.
Did Betty accept that?
Not initially. She actually tried to assert her independence. She left Peter for a time, moved in with Joan, but ultimately she went back. She returned to her husband.
Oh, wow. And Joan Rabel, how did she take that?
Terribly. This decision just ignited this awful rage in Joan. She became completely convinced that Peter hadn't just, won his wife back. She believed he had stolen Betty, used his position, his power, the social pressures of the time to force Betty's hand.
So this is the motive taking shape. Revenge.
Calculated revenge. But Joan, it seems, wasn't going to do it herself. She was the planner, the mastermind.
But not the executioner.
Right. She needed a weapon, obviously. But more than that, she needed someone vulnerable enough, someone she could manipulate into actually pulling the trigger.
And that someone was Goldine Pizer.
That was Goldine Pizer. Goldine was 43 years old at the time. The psychological profiles presented later in court, they paint a picture of someone quite lonely, very suggestible, emotionally fragile was the term used.
She even lied about her past to fit in.
Yeah, she pretended to be a widow, apparently for, respectability, when actually she was divorced. Just seeking acceptance, it seems.
And Joan Rabel saw this, saw the vulnerability.
Recognized it immediately, and exploited it with chilling calculation. The sources show she groomed Goldine over several months.
How? What did she tell her?
She spun this elaborate story, convinced Goldine that Peter was horribly abusing Betty, physically, graphically abusing her. Joan just kept hammering these lies, feeding Goldine's insecurities, her desire for Joan's approval.
Until Goldine believed it, believed she had to act.
Until Goldine, desperate for Joan's affection, desperate to be a hero in Joan's eyes, became utterly convinced they had to save Betty from this monster, that killing Peter was a righteous act.
The level of manipulation, it's staggering. And that's key to how the legal side played out later, isn't it?
Absolute crucial. Goldine was the one who actually bought the murder weapon, a .38 revolver. But she used money Joan gave her. She told the seller it was for self-defense.
And Halloween. It provided the perfect cover.
The chaos, the masks, the unusual activity, it was the perfect night for something like this.
So how did they execute the plan?
Meticulously, they borrowed that green car we mentioned earlier for anonymity. Both women wore jeans, masks, and weirdly, red gloves. Joan waited in the car. She was the getaway driver, while Goldine, the manipulated pawn, wearing her costume, walked up to the Fabiano house and rang the bell.
And Peter answered, asked why they were so late.
And Goldine shot him.
When Goldine finally confessed, what did she say? Why did she do it?
Her confession was chillingly simple. She basically said, I wanted to please Joan. Peter was a bad man. She genuinely seemed to believe she'd done something heroic, something necessary.
So what happened to them, legally?
The prosecution, faced with proving premeditation for Joan beyond doubt and recognizing the extent of Goldine's manipulation, they eventually accepted guilty pleas to second-degree murder from both women.
And the sentence.
They both received sentences of 5 years to life.
Those psychological profiles must have played a big role.
They really did. Goldine was officially labeled a passive personality, someone who was malleable in the hands of Miss Rebel, extremely suggestible. Joan was characterized very differently, as cold, almost schizoid, the controlling figure, the orchestrator who found a weaker personality and basically weaponized her.
And the final twist, the betrayal. Goldine didn't realize she'd been used until after it was all over.
That's the truly gut-wrenching part, reading the sources. Goldine only fully grasped the depth of the manipulation when, after the murder, Joan just coldly cut her off, told her, essentially, forget you ever knew me. And Goldine realized it wasn't about saving Betty at all. It was just about removing Peter, clearing the path, so Joan could try and win Betty back for herself.
So this case, hidden motives, forbidden love, manipulation, all culminating on Halloween.
It became known as the trick-or-treat murder, and it really was one of the first times, certainly in the major American media, that Halloween became explicitly linked with this kind of calculated, hidden domestic violence.
It's terrifying. If the Fabiano case shows us that darkness hiding inside the home, born from jealousy and secrets, the next story we need to cover flips that entirely. It exposes the fear of darkness coming from outside. A stranger danger type of terror that, honestly, changed Halloween forever.
Yeah, we have to shift focus now. Because after Fabiano, while disturbing, it was seen as specific, personal. The fear that really took hold nationally, the one that became synonymous with Halloween danger, was candy tampering.
Right, the poison candy paranoia. Did that start in 74?
Not entirely. There were minor incidents before. The sources mention a case in 1959, actually, where a dentist handed out candy laced with laxatives, made about 30 kids sick, so the anxiety, the seed was there.
But nothing like what happened in Texas.
Nothing remotely close. The 1974 tragedy took that simmering suspicion and just blew it up into full-blown national terror.
Okay, set the scene for us. Where and when?
It's Deer Park, Texas, Halloween night, 1974. There'd been rain earlier, but it stopped, leaving the streets kind of damp, quiet, maybe a little eerie.
And who was involved?
We have 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien, his younger sister Elizabeth, and their father, Ronald O'Brien, who was 30 at the time. They were out trick-or-treating with another family, a friend named Jim Bates and his kids. A typical Halloween group.
Okay, so they're going house to house.
Right. And they come across this one house that just looks dark, uninviting, no lights on, looks like nobody's home. So the kids, naturally, they skip it and move on to the next one.
But the father, Ronald O'Brien, he didn't.
No. He lingered behind, just for a moment. Then he catches back up with the group. And when he does, he's holding something.
What was it? 5
long tubes of that powdered candy, pixie sticks. Big ones, very colorful, appealing to kids.
Where did he say he got them?
He claimed a man, barely visible, just cracked the door open a tiny bit at that dark house and handed them out.
Okay, so he has 5 tubes.
And he distributes them. 1 goes to Timothy, 1 to Elizabeth, 2 go to Jim Bates' children, and later he gives the 5th one to another kid in the neighborhood, a 10-year-old named Whitney Parker.
So he spread them out.
He did, which, in hindsight, looks like an attempt to muddy the waters, to make it look random if something happened, disguising the real target.
And something did happen later that night.
Later that evening, yes. Just before bedtime, little Timothy asks his dad if he can have one last treat. You know, the pixie sticks. Ronald helps him open it. The top was apparently stapled shut, which was unusual. Timothy pours some of the powder into his mouth, and instantly he reacts badly. Says it tastes bitter, just overwhelmingly bitter. He tries to wash it down with some Kool-Aid. Within a minute, literally within 60 seconds, Timothy starts vomiting, convulsing. He collapses.
Oh, my God.
He died on the way to the hospital. Just like that.
And the autopsy. What did it find? It wasn't just bitterness.
No, it was cyanide, potassium cyanide. A fast-acting, incredibly lethal poison. This white, crystalline substance had been mixed into the candy powder. Investigators determined the dose in that single pixie sticks Timothy ate. It was enough poison to kill 3 grown men, a massive, deliberate dose.
The reaction must have been immediate. Panic.
Pure, absolute panic. Police scrambled. They raced to collect the other pixie sticks Ronald had handed out.
The other kids?
The other 4 tubes were recovered. They were still sealed, stapled shut, untouched. But the damage was already done. The story exploded.
This is where Halloween fundamentally changed for a lot of people, wasn't it?
This was the breaking point. Local newspapers, then national news. Headlines screaming about poison candy. Warnings everywhere. Someone is poisoning children's Halloween candy.
8-year-old Timothy O'Brien was the only child to have eaten any of it. And now friends and family are paying their final respects.
Some of these small Tootsie Rolls turned in, only 2 so far. Inside these Tootsie Rolls have been placed 1.5-inch long sewing needles lengthwise inside the candy. You can open the ends and insert the needle with no trouble at all.
Pasadena police are warning parents to check trick-or-treat candy like this and to throw it out if they find anything suspicious. There were children who were neglecting these warnings, and as late as last night were still out trick-or-treating. Sandra Feldman, Eyewitness News.
The holiday just turned into this nightmare overnight. Fear, suspicion, parents frantically checking everything.
And the police investigation. It focused on Ronald O'Brien's story, right?
Initially, yes, that mysterious figure became the focus, but the story started to unravel almost immediately.
How so?
Well, first, the owner of that dark house. He had a rock-solid alibi. He was at work as an air traffic controller until well after 11 p.m. that night. He couldn't possibly have handed out any candy.
Yeah, that's a major hole.
Huge. Plus, investigators talked to everyone in the area, checked with pharmacists. No one remembered selling cyanide, which is tightly controlled, to anyone matching the vague description Ronald gave. No one saw this supposed stranger.
So his story just didn't hold up?
It crumbled completely under scrutiny. And suspicion, this sort of awful disbelief that a stranger would do something so randomly evil, it began to turn toward the father himself.
And when they looked into Ronald O'Brien's life?
The sources paint a really stark picture. This was a man drowning financially.
How bad was it?
He'd gone through something like 20 different jobs in just 10 years, constantly changing, unstable. He was deeply in debt, hundreds of thousands in today's money. And he was on the verge of losing his house. The financial pressure was just immense, you know?
Okay, that's motive territory. But the clincher?
That was the damning discovery. Just weeks before Halloween, Ronald had taken out new life insurance policies on both Timothy and his daughter, Elizabeth.
How much were they worth?
$60,000 in total, a significant sum back then, especially for someone in his financial state.
And then, the timing of his call to the insurance company. That just freezes the blood.
It really does. On the very day Timothy died, the same day, Ronald O'Brien picks up the phone and calls the insurance company, coldly inquiring about the payout, how soon he could get the money, what the process was. It showed a chilling level of detachment. And then the police dug deeper, found more evidence of planning.
Like what?
It turned out Ronald had been quietly asking around, talking to pharmacists, co-workers, asking about cyanide, where could you buy it, how does it work, what's a legal dose.
What was his explanation for that?
Weak. Very weak. He claimed he was just curious, learned about it from school experiments or something like that.
Right. Nobody bought that.
Of course not. The evidence pointed to one thing: a deliberate, premeditated plot to acquire a deadly poison, use Halloween as cover, murder his own son for insurance money, and try to make it look like the act of a random madman by distributing poisoned candy to other children, too. So the trial in 1975, it was intense. He was charged not just with Timothy's murder, but also with 4 counts of attempted murder for the other Pixie Sticks. That was key to showing the broader deceptive plan.
And the jury, how long did they take?
Their decision was incredibly fast. It reflected the sheer horror of the crime and the strength of the evidence. They only needed 46 minutes. 46 minutes to find him guilty of first-degree murder.
Wow. And the sentence?
They took a bit longer for that, maybe grappling with the finality, 71 more minutes. But the decision was the same: death.
And the media latched onto him, didn't they? The nicknames.
Oh, immediately. He was dubbed the Candyman and also the man who killed Halloween. And those names, they stuck, because they perfectly captured the crime's profound, devastating impact on the holiday's innocence.
How long was he on death row? Did he ever confess?
He spent 9 years on death row. And no, he maintained his innocence right up until the very end. His execution was March 31st, 1984. He released a final statement, still denying responsibility, blaming the system, offering this sort of hollow forgiveness.
But the scene outside the prison, that's the image that really lasts, isn't it?
It is. There was a crowd, maybe 300 people, gathered outside the Huntsville unit, and as the news of his execution spread, some in the crowd, they started chanting.
Chanting what?
The phrase he'd corrupted. Trick or treat, trick or treat. Some people were even throwing candy up into the air. It was this incredibly macabre, almost surreal scene, completing that devastating circle of what he'd done.
Just horrifying. And the legacy of that case, it's still with us.
Absolutely. The O'Brien case permanently changed how people approached Halloween. That fear shifted from something abstract, maybe a ghost story, to something terrifyingly immediate and personal. Your own candy could be dangerous.
It led to all the safety measures we see now.
Directly. The hypervigilance, the X-raying of candy for a while, the move towards organized, safe trick-or-treating events at schools or malls, the obsession with checking wrappers for tampering, all of that can be traced right back to Ronald O'Brien. He taught America that sometimes the real monster isn't the stranger, it's someone you trust.
So we've seen the hidden violence inside the home in '57. Then this calculated, greed-driven murder that sparked mass panic in '74. Where does the third case take us? How does the darkness manifest differently again?
The third case shifts the focus again, not on hidden relationships, not on elaborate financial plots, but on the trick part of trick-or-treat and how that tradition of mischief, of minor pranks, could suddenly escalate into lethal random violence.
Okay, so the trick. Usually it's harmless stuff, right? Annoying maybe, but harmless. Throwing eggs, toilet papering houses.
Yeah, shaving cream on cars. The classic teenage pranks, that's historically what the trick meant. But the sources we looked at, especially from the 80s onwards, they show this blurring line, particularly in crowded, maybe tense urban areas.
How so? What changes?
The anonymity that Halloween provides, the masks, the darkness, just the sheer number of people out and about it seems to embolden some individuals. Minor conflicts, things that might otherwise blow over, can escalate dramatically. The night's chaos becomes a kind of cover.
And this third case is an example of that escalation.
A tragic, brutal example. This takes us to Halloween night, October 31st, 1998, in the Bronx, New York City.
Okay. Who was the victim?
A young man named Karl Jackson. He was only 21. And he was just doing something completely normal, completely innocent. He was driving home.
With family?
Yeah, with his girlfriend and her 9-year-old son. They'd been at a children's Halloween party, just heading home after a nice evening.
So what happened? What was the trigger?
It was ridiculously minor. A group of teenagers was out doing the trick thing, throwing eggs at cars driving by.
Okay, standard Halloween nuisance.
Exactly. Annoying, maybe causes a mess, but usually that's it. One of the eggs hit Karl Jackson's windshield.
And Karl's reaction? Did he get angry?
That's the thing. According to all the witnesses, his reaction was remarkably calm. He pulled the car over, yes. But he got out and approached the teenagers calmly. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't threatening them. He just asked them to stop. Stop throwing eggs, respect people's property. Basic stuff.
So a reasonable confrontation.
Totally reasonable. After making his point, he turned around, got back into his car. The intention was clearly just to drive away. End of incident.
But it wasn't the end.
No. That calm request, that simple act of asking them to stop, it was met with instant horrific violence. One of the teenagers, 17-year-old named Curtis Sterling, he pulled out a gun.
Just like that. Over eggs.
Over eggs, and a calm request to stop throwing them. Curtis Sterling raised the gun and fired. The bullet went through the rear window of Karl's car. It struck Karl Jackson in the back of the head.
Killed him instantly.
Instantly, right there in the driver's seat, in front of his girlfriend, in front of her 9-year-old son. A life extinguished over absolutely nothing. A senseless, impulsive act of rage.
What happened to Curtis Sterling?
He was arrested just hours later. The police caught up with him quickly. He was eventually convicted of second-degree murder plus illegal weapons possession.
And the sentence?
He received a 20-year sentence for taking Karl Jackson's life.
This case feels different from the others. The lack of motive.
It's completely different. The Fabiano case, you had this complex web of relationships, jealousy, manipulation. O'Brien was driven by cold, calculated greed. But the Jackson case, it's pure impulse. Random, explosive rage, magnified by having a gun readily available and maybe feeling anonymous or emboldened by the Halloween chaos.
The victim's father said something really poignant about it, didn't he?
He did. Karl Jackson's father captured the sheer senselessness of it. He said something like, a life was taken for nothing. Karl never even went out on Halloween usually. He only went that night to keep the boy safe. Just devastating.
And this wasn't just a one-off, sadly. This kind of thing became more common.
Yeah, the sources confirmed this wasn't an isolated tragedy. Police records, especially from the late 80s and 90s, showed dozens of really serious violent incidents, shootings, stabbings, severe assaults happening on Halloween night, often starting under the guise of a prank or a minor dispute that just spirals out of control. The trick became a trigger or a disguise for much deeper aggression.
Is that why police presence increases so much on Halloween now?
It's exactly why. Major city police departments, like the NYPD in this case, they specifically ramp up patrols every October 31st. They recognize that the atmosphere, the costumes, the crowds, the anything goes vibe can be volatile. It creates situations where that line between harmless fun and lethal violence becomes terrifyingly thin.
And the impact on the family. Karl Jackson's mother has a ritual, doesn't she?
A heartbreaking one. The reports mention that every year on the anniversary, she sends a card to Curtis Sterling in prison.
What'd it say?
Just one sentence. Every year, the same sentence. I'm glad you're still there.
Wow. Just quiet, relentless grief and anger? A reminder of the life stolen over an egg?
A testament to the enduring pain caused by that single, senseless act of violence on Halloween night.
So looking back at these three cases, 1957, 1974, 1998, we see this dark evolution, don't we? From hidden personal violence.
Right. The secrets behind the mask in the Fabiano case.
Through this calculated, almost corporate kind of evil that terrorized the nation with O'Brien.
Yeah, destroying trust on a massive scale for financial gain.
This sudden, random, almost nihilistic rage we see in the Jackson case.
Where the holiday itself, the trick, just becomes an excuse, a flashpoint for deadly violence. The mask changes, doesn't it? From hiding secrets to hiding calculation to just enabling pure, anonymous aggression.
But the common thread seems to be human darkness finding an outlet.
Exactly. It's human weakness, whether it's jealousy or greed or just petty explosive anger, finding a way to use the one night of a year when we actively celebrate the monstrous, the grotesque, to commit truly monstrous and grotesque acts.
These stories, these sources, they're more than just old police reports or newspaper clippings. They're like snapshots of how our fears have changed, how the holiday reflects something darker within society itself. Every Halloween, we put on masks, we tell stories about vampires and ghosts and things that go bump in the night.
But maybe the scariest creatures, the ones we should really be afraid of, they don't need the latex masks or the fake blood. They walk among us every day, driven by impulses that are frighteningly mundane, yet capable of absolute brutality.
It's a chilling thought. We invite you, our listeners, to subscribe to X-Crimes. We delve into more stories like these, exploring the darkness that often hides just beneath the surface of everyday life, all year round.
Stay with us. And remember, sometimes the monsters are real.